Hey gang, I'm back at the yard here with Ed, and Ed's going to give us an update. I mean, it's only been a couple of days, and you can see significant improvement and change on what's going on with the boat. So let me turn it over to Ed to give us an update.
Starting at the masthead, we have the transducer for the wind. That's a Garmin transducer. See how that works. This is a bottle brush, which is an ion dissipator, and this sheds off the static charge that accumulates when there's lightning around. The idea that when you shed the static charge, lightning won't be so prone to hit the masthead. Of course, this is the VHF antenna. This is the little Windex. It gives you a very sensitive to where the wind's blowing. And then you see this is an LED anchor light here. This is the standard anchor light that they have at Catalina. This is the high-def digital TV antenna. And you know it's got a little standoff that we install here so that it doesn't foul anything. And then as you look down the spar, you see the roller furling section's been put together. All the standing rigging and running rigging is in place, all of this. And this right here is a coupler for a single sideband. And then underneath the boat, there's going to be a grounding plate back in the stern of the boat. The grounding plate in this coupler allows the single sideband to pick up the signal and transmit. This is an Icon N803, I believe, or 804 is the single sideband that'll go on this boat. This boat will also get the Iridium Go exec, and it will get Starlink. Starlink is used principally on RVs, so you can move at a fair speed. And as we walk down the spar a little further, you'll see that everything is in place. By the way, this is all the Selden equipment, and it's beautifully done. If you look at the quality of everything, how everything is run, it's all fair. There's no hard lines. And then if we move down the spar some more, you'll see here's all the running rigging in place. What will happen is when we get the last part, we're missing a track for a hybrid spinnacle pole that's aluminum and carbon fiber. The track has to go on first before we step the rig. And when we step the rig, all of this has to be kind of separated into place, if you can imagine it. And of course, when the rig gets stepped, it has to come down to the top of the boat, to the mast step plate, at a very slow, precise rate of speed. And as it just kisses the mast plate, the bottom of the mast there on the boat, then all the shrouds and stays will go ahead and get put into place so that we can begin to run all of this running rigging. When we get all the running rigging finished, going back to the rope clutches, then we'll be able to think about launching the boat only after the bottom paint has been applied. They haven't started that yet. That'll be in the next few days. Okay.
So you can see they installed the shrouds already. It's a pin setup on these, so they get pinned. They're not screwed in. And you have double, so you have double shrouds. So what kind of radar did they put in, Ed?
This is the Garmin radar. It's a Doppler radar, 18-mile radar. It's really good. You can see weather, you can see targets. It'll actually show rain. These Doppler radars are fantastic. You know, when we first started seeing Doppler radar on television, it was quite a breakthrough. Now that you have Doppler radar on boats, it's remarkable how well they work, how easily they paint the picture. And when you see on the radar, when you see targets, they'll either be shown, they'll show in red or green, and if they're moving away from you, they'll show green, and if they're moving towards you, they'll show red. So with the color orientation, it makes it really very easy to stay safe. That's kind of a breakthrough in about the last 6 or 7 years when that became available to our industry. Down at this end, you'll see everything is kind of staged. Can you imagine all of this has to be sorted out when the mast goes up, and it has to be done perfectly.
Wow, it takes a lot of precision setup here.
Then on the top of the boat, up on the deck of the boat, there's a matching plate that this will sit down on, and there's in that plate in the middle, there's a group of wires just like this that come up through a pipe, a stand pipe, and those wires and these wires will all be connected, and then all of this everything that's after the connection, Everything that's left over will be pushed into the mast, and then there's a cover plate that goes on the spar.
Let's see if I can get a little bit of an angle in here. So you can see you're looking at the inside of the mast. They have tracks designed to bring a lot of the wiring for the instrumentation up at the top. Can't see it because of the camera angle, but you can see the little bit of light on the backside where the wiring is going to come in. But that's a lot of wire to push into that little hole after they get done.
And this is the cover plate for it right here when it's all finished.
And for those of you who ever wonder what the base of the mast looks like on a Catalina, check it out. It has a shape to create locking components up on the deck. And you can see if I can get light to see. You can see through the bottom of the mast going up where the light comes in from the side where the wires are going in. So Ed, tell us about what is this white thing they have here? What this is a paint? This is what is this called?
This is fiberglass dust from the factory. This is how we get the boat. And what's going to happen is blue dicum, like you can see on the boat next to us. That blue dicum is a dye. That dye is going to be lightly sanded off with this orbital sander over here, handheld sander. And when that dicum is totally sanded off the boat, then it'll be ready for the first coats of the two-part epoxy primer barrier coat. After the epoxy, there's several stages of that two-part epoxy primer barrier coat, and when that is when it's finished, the 2 or 3 coats of that, then the bottom paint will go on, and there'll be a couple of coats of bottom paint, and then a coat around the waterline, which is kind of a halo coat, just because the sun attacks the bottom paint a little more right at the waterline than it does as you go further down the hull. And I want to show you here also installed, there's going to be 4 underwater lights on this boat. And these underwater lights will glow white or blue. You can see they're little LED lights. And there's one on each side exactly in the same position. And then coming north here, there's going to be 2 more lights right here on each side. We've marked them. And to determine where the lights go, you have to go inside the boat and look at the geometry on the inside of the boat to see where you can drill the hole. There's just a tiny little hole about this big. That's the through hole part of the light. And then you screw it down towards you put bedding material under it. Screw that down with a nut, just like it were the normal through hole, except it's much, much smaller. On the inside of the boat, we have to kind of look through the inside of the boat really carefully to see where that light can go through, and a wire run that will be a good, easy wire run, with the idea in mind that someday in the future, probably these lights will be replaced. So we want to have everything set up, not just for now, but in the future as well. Also on this boat is calling for a 4-blade feathering prop, which is a max prop. Beautifully done. Here, I'll show you how this works. When you're sailing, that's the position of the prop, and you'll notice there's virtually no drag, no resistance on these blades. Then when you're backing up or going forward, the prop rotates, and when you have these are beautiful props, these max props. By the way, this is filled with grease. Because this hub is filled with grease, you have a bullet zinc on the back, and you have a collar zinc on the shaft. Because of the grease inside of this zinc will not protect the prop shaft. You have to have a separate zinc. So we've done that. Also, if you'll notice over here on this little skeg, there's a speed scoop. Inside that speed scoop is a hole about a 1/2 inch in diameter, and that hole allows water to come in and cool the cutlass bearing and cool the packing gland. And it actually adds a little bit to the tracking stability of the boat because it is a little skeg. And you'll notice by doing it that way, you don't have a strut hanging underneath the boat, which also protects everything underneath the boat. Catalina's done a great job of engineering this. It's kind of a Catalina exclusive.
See, those are a lot of things little details that we take for granted when we get our boats that we really didn't know. I mean, I didn't know we had that little hole on the scoop to provide water circulation for the shaft or the cutlass bearing. So, it's great that Ed is giving us this walkthrough and educating us all. and all the details that go into a great boat. So let's keep going.
What we do with every new Catalina is we remove the bifold companionway doors, and it takes about a week to go ahead and sand them down perfectly smooth. We take off all the hardware, sand everything, and then we put several coats, about 6 coats of Cetal clear and bright. So it kind of gives a pretty good varnish appearance, although it's not varnished as such. And I build these blanks, what I call blanks, for the companionways, and we put the blanks in place so no water or weather can get inside the boat while we're finishing off the companionway doors. And on this boat, I'll show you one other thing that's kind of beautiful. This boat called for the teak cockpit table, and these are beautifully done. And of course, these grooves come up about like so.
That's a beautiful woodwork.
Yep, compartment there that you can throw ice in. There's a drain down at the bottom. You can put ice in here. There's also a plug that goes in so that you can put ice and drinks out here, or if you don't need that, you just put whatever you want, whatever loose gear that you want in here. If you'll notice, the underside of this, the inside, is a soft material like you would do on a classic car, and that's to keep this umbrella, smoke-colored gray umbrella, from chafing the finish on the table itself. At this point, we've unpacked everything, and we have our instruments here. I've gone ahead and put the steering wheels on.
Those are beautiful, leather cover.
Yep.
Steering wheel.
I'm going to turn this, so there we go. So she's now fore and aft. This is where the ram mic is going to go, for example. And then under here, we've got an additional plug that we buy with all of our boats, where you'll have the corded remote for the windlass can be operated from here or up at the anchor locker.
So Ed, what kind of electronics are we getting on this boat?
This boat has a full suite of Garmin electronics. So it's VHF, depth, knot, log, wind point, wind speed. It has 2 12-inch Garmin MFDs, GPS MFDs. MFDs are multifunction displays. And actually all of these are also multifunction displays. And you can cursor through several pages here. And all of the instruments talk to each other. They're on it's NEMA 2000. It's on a backbone, and there's drops for each instrument. This is the autopilot on the Garmin autopilot head right here, controller. So it's a complete setup, and with the radar and AIS, you're not missing much. And this boat will have also has WeatherFax, Garmin WeatherFax or weather. So anywhere you want to be, and of course then when you add to that the Iridium Go exec and the Starlink, you're communicating anywhere in the world just about 24 hours a day, every day, as well as the boat communicating with itself. It is remarkable the changes since I started in business 45 years ago, when we would get boats with no instruments, just a compass. And what we get now, what we can order from the factory, and Catalina does a first-class job. Ocean Equipment is who installs all of this. A fellow named Clint Basket has been installing all these instruments for years and years, whether they're Raymarine or Garmin. We've kind of elected to go with Garmin because we feel Garmin's probably a little more up-to-date right now than Raymarine, although they kind of flip-flopping back on who's got the latest and the greatest. But for the moment, we're going with Garmin.
So as you can see, the amount of work that's been done just in a few days with this boat. They got everything unpacked, everything basically organized, and it's moving pretty fast. So this is going to be pretty neat to see be able to see the process and see the end product. So we're going to go take a look at the mast, at the base of the mast, kind of look at the matching set for the bottom of the mast that we just showed you. So let's see what we can learn.
This is the matching part to all the wires that you saw at the base of the mast. And you can see how this mast plate will marry the shape of the bottom of the mast itself. And it kind of locks into place. All the wires come through right here, as you can see. And they'll be connected to all the wires coming out of the bottom of the mast. Also, I want to show you something that's quite unique. There's these screws, machine screws, in each corner of this mast part here. This is a compression post mast where the mast sits here. And what's different about this construction that's uniquely Catalina is that this part here has a stainless steel tube welded to it. That stainless steel tube goes down to a box beam running a thwart ship. Inside that box beam is a stainless steel T-beam. And there's a plate like this, but much smaller, that is drilled and tapped and screwed into that T-beam. And then with the compression post welded to this, there's no actual compression on the deck whatsoever. And then just before they screw these down, of course, there's all this bedding material under here. And then the deck is probably pulled up about that much with these 4 screws so that there's no possibility of getting a leak here. It just can't happen. It's a very secure system, and it greatly helps when you want to decommission the boat, de-rig the boat to maybe move it over land. This compression post system allows you to take everything apart much more easily than trying to take a keel step mast out of the boat. Of course, with this compression post system, you eliminate the need for mast partners, mast boot, and the leaks that are associated with that. So this is a superior system. And Catalina are the only people I know that actually weld the compression post to this plate that's on the deck. I want to show you the anchor locker next.
All right, let's check it out.
So we're going to look at the Catalina anchor locker, kind of how they set their boats up and how we set them up ourselves. So far, we've gone ahead. We'll open this anchor locker lid. You'll notice the anchor locker lid is on a strut, so it opens by itself and it stays open. And there is your quick anchor windlass corded remote controller, and that can either live here or back at the cockpit. And then what we've done so far is we've got a 55-pound Rockna anchor with a Mantis anchor chain swivel shackle, and you can see it's put into place and it's been wired. Shackle's not going to come apart. And then we bring it back to the windlass, and we always add a Mantis chain hook, a really robust chain hook. By the way, that's known as a halyard, and I always put those on versus bowline knots because these are more permanent. They can't shake themselves loose. What we haven't done yet is put in the chain stopper. It will go right up there, and there'll be a chain stopper for this chain, and there'll be another chain stopper for a future second anchor. You'll also notice that this anchor locker is divided. And what we do is we put the chain on one side and put the anchor line on the other side so that when you're pulling up the chain and there's mud and stuff on the chain, it won't cover the line. That way it's easy enough to go ahead and clean the chain. So what we do, we splice the anchor line to the chain, so this chain gypsy will accommodate both chain and anchor rope. There's 200 feet, 5/16 G4 grade 43 galvanized anchor chain, 200 feet of it, and then 175 feet of the 5/8 3-strand New England rope anchor line. So we've got 375 feet of ground tackle, and that should do quite nicely. We're set up so that when we want to put a second anchor on, we can do that pretty easily.
All right, gang. So that's our update. So, Ed, what do we got coming up next?
What happens next, as we had mentioned earlier, is we're going to do the bottom job. That'll take about a week. The initial bottom job is much more in-depth and costly and time-consuming than refreshes. But if you do the bottom job exactly right, you're never going to have a problem. And we, in Sneed Island Boat Works, that's where we are now, in Palmetto, Florida, does a spectacular job. So what we'll do next is we'll come back about when the mast is going to be stepped and hopefully be able to actually film a mast being stepped here at Sneed. And not many people have seen that, so that should be interesting. Yep.
Well, folks, there you have it. Kind of next step in the progression of commissioning the boat. Still a lot of work to do, but a lot of progress being made as we go. So thank you, Ed, for letting us share this with the rest of the world. And we're going to be back here in a couple of days or about a week once we're ready for the bottom getting done and the mast ready to get stepped, and we'll show you what that looks like. In the meantime, inside, not a lot going on other than the unpacking and unwrapping, so we'll save showing you the interior of the boat for the next episode. So with that, thank you so much for watching, and see you soon.